Okay, Blade, released in 1998, starring Wesley Snipes, directed by Stephen Norrington, and written by David S. Goyer. This is the first successful Marvel film. Marvel had a few films in the 1980s, like The Punisher in 1989 and Howard the Duck in 1986. Both of these films didn't really do too well for Marvel movies. The first Blade made $131 million, and many audiences didn't know it was a superhero film. It came off as an R-rated vampire horror film, and that helped the film a lot. With the success of Batman and Superman films, who are well-known superheroes, their films definitely reflected the whole aesthetic and visuals of the 1980s and early 90s. After a while, the studios became a little bit more saturated with superhero movies, and it became very cheesy. So until Blade, the gothic vampire slayer, dressed in all black leather and dark sunglasses, this was the first R-rated Marvel film that hit theaters before Logan and before Deadpool. Blade opened and had a trilogy in the years to come, Blade 2 and Blade Trinity, with a combined earning of $415 million. Now, back in 1996, Marvel was going bankrupt, so by 1998, Blade's success, the first successful film that saved Marvel, making superhero movies cool again. It opened up, before X-Men, which came out in 2000. It opened before Spider-Man, which came out in 2002. And of course, this was predating, the success of Black Panther. Let's also not forget that, the black leather trench coats and sunglasses and the techno music and martial arts all in one movie. This was a year before The Matrix. So, also too, Blade had a series in 2006 on Spike TV. The show picked up after Blade Trinity. It was canceled after the first season because Spike TV was pretty new at the time and couldn't really afford the production of the show, but it's still worth mentioning because it obviously predates, the success of, Cloak and Dagger, Daredevil, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and WandaVision, and Luke Cage. It was the start of the successful Marvel trilogy that they have now. Now you have, Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, you have Captain America, and you have Winter Soldier, and you have, Civil War, things like that. Blade did it first, though, and it's just basically giving him his flowers and giving him his just due, and to remind people how awesome this film really is, and not just for superhero movies, but just for vampire movies, period. After a while, you started just getting, very cheesy, romantic and emo type of vampires. The vampires in Blade are vampires. They're mean, they're ugly, they're, vicious, and you get behind the fact that, they're being hunted, that was also a good thing just for horror movies in general and just for vampire movies in the 90s at that point, with the success of Interview with the Vampire. It became more of this romantic, sensitive, vulnerable type of film, and with all due respect, but people wanted a mean, evil, vicious vampire movie, and that's what Blade gave you. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you check it out because this movie is definitely one of Wesley Snipes' most known films. I mean, the man is known for drama and comedy, but, when it comes to him doing action, Blade is definitely up there. And the martial arts action sequences, the horror, the opening scene, the first 10 minutes of the movie is just mind-blowing. You're gonna remember this movie after you watch it for the first time. It's really grounded in reality, so it felt like vampires were real, that they actually could be in a real world and they could be around you, and that was what the first film gave you. The sequels were definitely more superhero feel. It definitely had that larger-than-life type of feel, but the first one is definitely more grounded in reality and felt more realistic. And the movie is about a kid who is born half vampire and half human. He has all the strengths of a vampire, like super senses, and he's able to have strength and flight, things of that nature, but he doesn't have the weaknesses like sunlight. So he's able to go out into the sun, which makes him a vampire hunter. He's basically trying to find the vampire that bit his mom while she was pregnant with him, which gave him the powers that he has. And so it's definitely a great action film, a great horror film, a great vampire film, a great superhero film that spawned so many successful Marvel films from the time of 98 till today, basically. Also, too, they're remaking a new Blade, which is going to be a part of the MCU. The thing about the old Blade with Wesley Snipes in 98, that's not a part of the cinematic universe. The cinematic universe didn't exist until years later with, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. But before the MCU, before there could even be an MCU, Blade opened the door for that, so he's not in the MCU yet. They're planning to have, Blade become a part of the MCU, and that's where he should be, honestly, because the success of those films and the banking that they took on to that film is what gave the formula and the format for years to come. So it doesn't matter if it's DC, it doesn't matter if it's Marvel. Blade opened the door for a lot of these cool superhero movies to come out in the future. And so if you haven't seen it, definitely go give it a chance, give it a look. Yeah, it's late 90s, so the sci-fi, the special effects and things like that may not be as great, but like I said, it's still grounded in reality, so in a way it definitely looks a little bit more gruesome, but it's still badass superhero movie. Thank you.